in the picture are part of it, part of just Charles Darwin studied, the theory of the species actually in a place like the Galapagos Islands. We're gonna focus in this presentation. But I would like to share with you a nice video about Ecuador.
In a world full of places that are so different, so special, there's one place that is way more different than anywhere else. Truly, deeply unique. Really? Yeah, let me tell you why. Well, on this planet of ours, there's one spot, and one spot alone, that's the closest point to the sun. Chimborazo volcano, 20,000 feet above sea level. It's best to wear sunblock. Like all of them, wait for it, 34 peaks at the Andes Avenue of volcanoes. Like Cotopaxi, the world's highest active volcano. Or Cayambe, the only snow-capped peak slap bang on the equator. Here you can horseback ride, paraglide, climb, bike, raft, or even trek for days while seeking out South America's only bear, who looks nothing like Paddington. Down on the coast, just 135 miles as the crow condor flies from Chimborazo, the winds and currents combine to create the perfect swells for surfing. Do you tend to fall off your board a lot? No worries, the waters are warm all year round. Perfect for snorkeling or scuba diving. Just follow the whales example. They come here every year from the Antarctic to have babies. Amazon, you have to secure. Yep, it has to be done. To climb a canopy tower to catch the sunrise over the world's largest river basin. Spot over 500 species of birds before paddling through creeks in a wooden canoe, led by guides who share their wisdom and the lessons of their Pachamama, their Mother Earth, who can teach us all a thing or two about wellness. 600 miles out in the Pacific, 100-year-old giant Galapagos tortoises, youngsters still by their standards, lumber and wallow, while Darwin's finches flit around. Only experts and liars can identify all 14 species. Families of sea lions on the beach invite you to swim out to dive amid turtles, sharks, and manta rays. This is why Ecuador, only the size of Colorado, is so captivating. This is why it's, yes, truly unique. This is why Ecuador isn't just a bucket list destination. It's the world's bucket list in one country, where adventures in nature are second nature.
Well, I think that was a very short way to say that Ecuador is actually, one of the best destinations to explore, where you could actually move from one place to another very, very quickly and actually, have most of the, I would say, places, just within 2 to 3 hours. So buckle up and why not to explore the center of the world. Then have you ever wondered what makes Ecuador so special? I would say, like, is it its geographical position? As you can see over here, we are located in the north, west of South America, being one of the smallest country, but very, 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 fortunate to be crossed by the equator, which actually provide us to have, multiple regions and multiple ecosystem, and actually a sustainable weather all year long, which actually the weather is determined by the altitude, not necessarily by the seasons. So with that have been said, I would like to say that Ecuador has no strict seasons as you do have in the United States or in other parts of the of the north. That's actually why we'll say that in Ecuador, some of the big highlights is the Amazon, the Andes, the beaches, the native markets, the gastronomy, its birds, its nature, and of course its culture. And one of our prestigious kind of like destination, which is the Galapagos Islands, that calls everyone's attention. But let's talk a little bit about facts. In Ecuador, its capital is Quito, where everything actually has started. But we have other cities such as Cuenca and Guayaquil, which are actually quite medium-sized or large cities that are around the 40% of the population are very, in 3 cities. We use American currency, which is actually very convenient for American clients, to come and explore our place. We're around 17.5 million people. I would say that, in terms of of our main exports. It would be oil, shrimps, bananas, and of course, tourism used to be one of our major kind of like industries. But after COVID, we are in the process of coming into the big five, major industries. So those are just simple facts about Ecuador itself. And then, is it actually its flora and fauna? I would like to say that our diversity is extraordinary. Just to give you some facts about this, maybe everyone has heard about Costa Rica being one of the most green and sustainable places to go and explore. I will say that in terms of numbers of flora and fauna, we double the size of Costa Rica species per square kilometer, and actually species in general. So just to give you an idea, in birds, we have around 1,650 species of birds, approx, where Costa Rica just has around 860. So only in that I can say, the difference in between our diversity. Or is it maybe it's people, the warmth of the people. Everywhere you go in Ecuador, traveling around, there's going to be a smile. And you maybe move 2 hours and you change actually the different kind of people that we have in this region area, not only people, diversity, ecosystem, weather, which is actually fantastic. In Ecuador, we have around 14 nationalities, which actually means to around 12 different languages spoken. Or is it maybe it's gastronomy? Because that's very nice to say in Ecuador, we do not import a lot of our products that we actually consume because our weather is sustainable all year long and it's not changing much. We have apples all year long, rice all year long, shrimps all year long, potatoes all year long. So all products are actually all year long grown in Ecuador because its ecosystem doesn't change as much as I said before because we have no seasons. Or is it maybe it's cultural diversity or it's cultural heritage? Just in Quito, we have many of these incredible, churches with the, heritage from the Spanish culture. I would say the actual picture that you're seeing is one of our main kind of like treasures in the UNESCO city of Quito, which is called the Golden Church. We're talking about 7 tons of gold inside of one church. It's incredible. Everything you see is made out of gold. But not only that, there's a lot of that actually, historical architecture in Ecuador. Why not, trading off those experiences and living into an adventure? And this is what we're going to focus on. I mean, just being in Ecuador, everywhere you see, there's a place to adventure. And that's where we're going to be talking about in this presentation. As I said before, just a simple facts, Ecuador is within the 17 most mega diverse, I would say, countries in the planet. When I'm talking about mega diversity, I'm talking about that we're talking about big numbers of flora and fauna in terms of per square kilometer. And Ecuador places number 1 in all of the countries that are mega diverse. In between this is actually the United States, of course, Costa Rica, of course, Colombia as one of the ranking, in the top 5. Of course, it's Brazil, Borneo, and many others that you maybe is in your bucket list. And why we say we're number 1? Because per square kilometer or per square hectare or per square mile, we have the most number of flora and fauna, per square mile, more than Brazil, for example. Brazil being 11 times bigger than Ecuador, they have only a little different number of birds, if you want to compare in birds, just to give you facts and numbers. Brazil is around 1,930 species of birds, and Ecuador is 1,650. But remember that Ecuador is 11 times smaller. So that's just tell us that Ecuador is actually an incredible place for diversity. Where is all of this diversity? It's actually in 4 regions. Ecuador is divided in 4 regions. The Galapagos Islands, of course, by the Pacific Ocean, around 600 miles away from mainland Ecuador. And then we have the coast, with around 5 big provinces or kind of like states, as you say. And over there, we have lots of kind of like beautiful destinations for beach, beautiful national parks. Then we have the highlands, which is all of the Andes. We have around 68, volcanoes. and around 21 of them active volcanoes. And they actually look like the background Cotopaxi, which is one of the big highlights, only around 42 miles outside of Quito. We can find already this incredible national park called Cotopaxi, which is beautiful. Good for all types of adventure over there. And then, of course, we have the Amazon rainforest, which happens to be around 42% of all of our Ecuadorian territory, but actually the least inhabited, whereas still we have jungles. And over there we have the richest number of ethnic groups, or actually different tribes living on, you know, some of them completely isolated. And one of them in uncontacted, which is actually within the only 3 types of groups in the whole Amazon territory, which is divided by 8 different countries in South America, where Brazil is number 1 with the largest, you know, kind of like part of the territory. In Ecuador, being only 2.7% of the whole Amazon region, we have the highest diversity, and actually one of the uncontacted groups is still alive in the Amazon of Ecuador, which is actually fantastic. Let's jump into the adventure. Everywhere you see, because of the canyons that you can see around, you know, there's places where we can actually do a little bit of adventure. So there is actually waterfalls, there's cable cars around canyons. These actually rivers are flowing into the Amazon. This particular photo is close to Baños. Baños is like the Mecca for the adventure. I'm talking about just 3.5 hours down south from Quito. We can reach this small place with only around 15,000 people, but surrounded by, you know, beautiful one volcano and beautiful surroundings of, you know, canyons, waterfalls, national parks, all green. In between, the gate in between the highlands and the Amazon is fantastic. This place called Baños, you know, near the Amazon, near the highlands. And then, you know, of course, let's talk a little bit about the Andes. We have around, again, you know, around 50 peaks. And then the Andes is starting in terms of meters, you know, around 1,500 meters to 6,310, you know, meters above sea level, which our highest, you know, mountain, which is Chimborazo. Consider, Chimborazo is very interesting because we just got that as a fact in 2019. Everyone knows about Everest, right? Everest, the real roof of the planet. And something very nice to say is that, yes, Everest may be the highest mountain above sea level, but Chimborazo volcano is maybe the highest mountain from the center of the earth. So I'm saying that if you take a photo of the planet, the highest peaks you will see by the center of the earth, or maybe the closest to the sky or to the atmosphere, it will be Chimborazo, and then Kilimanjaro in Africa. So those are because the planet is not a complete circle. We're both, you know, flooded on both poles, North Pole and South Pole, which makes the center of the planet, you know, maybe at around 2,000 meters higher than Everest. So that being said, of course, everything is measured above sea level. This is just a fact we have as Ecuadorians. Maybe the closest point to the sky is actually Chimborazo volcano. So that's something very nice. Of course, over there, we practice a lot of adventure, you know, a kind of like, you know, sports over there as well. The Amazon, as I said, 43% of the Ecuadorian territory, but it actually has the largest cultural diversity. And of course, the Amazon is the only, the only, you know, or the largest rainforest, you know, we have in Earth, not only, I'm saying, in Ecuador. Ecuador is actually a small part of the Amazon territory, but actually one of the best parts where we have the highest diversity. I would say, you know, we have some symbolic, national parks such as Yasuní National Park, which happens to be one of the most diverse in the planet. And over there, there's still a lot of, you know, undiscovered species being discovered every single year, and a lot of scientific research, you know, in Amazon and in the Amazon of Ecuador. Which is actually one of my favorite places as well. Then, you know, let's start a little bit about talking about this cultural heritage, you know, within 2 important cities, let's say Quito as a UNESCO city, also Cuenca as a UNESCO city, but in terms of, I would say, you know, some of the important UNESCO sites in Ecuador, we have many, not only cultural, but also natural. In some of them that have been nominated as #1, such as Quito and the Galapagos Islands. Here, a little bit of representation of all of how our people looks like. In Ecuador, we have a tremendous, cultural diversity. And of course, all of these people live to incredible natural paradises because they are still living in the outdoor, in these beautiful, national reserves or protected areas. When I started as a guide, I'm talking about back in 2004, 2003, we only have around 30 protected areas. Ecuador has done incredible work in terms of conservation. Right now, we have 48 protected areas in Ecuador. So it's actually impressive. So we're actually betting on that, betting on conservation, protection, and of course, trying to welcome more clients into our beautiful natural resources. We also have ancient, ruins. This is actually Inca Pirca in the down south of Ecuador. It's part of the heritage of the Incas. So we have a nice sites, of course, not as bigger as Machu Picchu, but very, very symbolic as well, that the Incas left into our territory. Or any type of like a multicultural experiences that we have in terms of parties. In Ecuador, there is 16 national holidays. I would say that we have more national holidays than most countries in South America, which is actually incredible. And what I want to say with that is maybe in your trip, there may be any type of kind of like festival happening somewhere where people dressed up just like, Brazil parade of the carnival, similar colors, but there's only in a small representation in maybe one small town when you're driving down. It happened many times to me when we have to just drive down somewhere around our itinerary, and we enter into a party, and of course we join. That's part of it, right? That's something like bonus on our trips, and that might happen in your trip as well. No, for sure. And I would say that life flourish perfect weather. And that's what I was saying before, like, whether it is determined by altitude more than actually seasons. We do have some seasons that say like more rainy part of the year than what we call winter, but it's not necessarily snowing here, or not dramatic changes in terms of temperature. I would say that it depends of where you are. Let's say you're by the coast and the water is always around, let's say 20, 22, 25 degrees Celsius, which will be close to maybe 75, 80 Fahrenheit all year long in the coast, just the water to go to the beach, which is all year long. And of course, warm all year long, maybe 80 to 85, maybe 90 Fahrenheit all year long. So it depends where you are. If you're by the mountains, of course, temperate weather all year long, like spring, and that never actually changes. I always say to clients that in Ecuador is very interesting because seasons don't choose you. You choose seasons. If you are snow, you just move 2 hours from Quito. You get by snow in Cotopaxi volcano. And if you want to go and kind of like take sand by the beach, then you go to the Galapagos, of course, by a flight of around 1.5 hours, 2 hours maximum. And then or you drive 2.5, maybe 3.5 hours to the coastline, and then you already have summer all year long as well. So we choose the weather. Imagine living in the spring all year long. It's exactly what I was telling you. In some parts, it's actually the weather is all year long the same. So time to come to Ecuador anytime, anytime. For the highlands, I would say in between June or maybe May to October. For the highlands, for the rainforest, I'm sorry, it's the rainforest. There's always sunny and rainy, or cloud forest. It's cloud forest, they're always sunny and rainy. For the Galapagos Islands, in between December to March, water is warm. Weather is a little more humid. It's called the rainy season. Rainy doesn't mean cold. Rainy means more humid and warmer. You might need to turn on the air conditioning. Versus, I would say April to November, which is a little bit more breezy, not cold, just more sunny days, maybe blue skies, but more breezy. Maybe you don't need to turn on the aircon because a little bit, more breezy. But is that, and of course, just in the Galapagos Islands, there is 7 different weathers because there's mountains as well, right? And then there's volcanoes in the Galapagos, and of course, in parts are clouded, which I would say it's very interesting living by the equator. And let's discover a little bit about the origins of, of the evolution, and a couple of two important persons that we will also consider in Ecuador, people that really make a change. And this will be Alexander von Humboldt, which is actually the person who reports most of the new species in the new the world to the Western, I would say. It happened to be at the end of the 1800s, the beginning of 1900s in Ecuador, and reported most of the species over here. And of course, Charles Darwin, which is, one of the persons that changed the looking at the world entirely with the theory of the species. And of course, let's talk a little bit about the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands is by far the #1 destination. I was trying to take you into Ecuador, but I know, one of the bucket lists is always the Galapagos Islands. Why not? A place where animals are fearless, a place where animals can just be, we say to clients, please stay away from the animals. You don't need a big, large camera with large zoom to actually take a photo of animals. You can do your own National Geographic pictures over there, because you're by the animals pretty much everywhere you go. And of course, we have a huge amount of species, in the surrounding waters, of the Galapagos. I would say is like a marine laboratory. And 97% of the Galapagos Islands is UNESCO and is protected. Only 3% is all of the human impact plus tourism, which I will say is very well managed. And then, of course, we have 32% of all of the species over there considered endemic, which means that only exist here. And then I'm talking about Galapagos penguin, for example. And then I'm talking about Galapagos heron, Galapagos lava gull, or we have a lot of like Galapagos sharks, Galapagos, and everything is named either Galapagos or either lava, because of course, the Galapagos Islands, it is actually, I will say, a volcanic, origin, such as Hawaii, but over here we have 3 different plates. And it would have been the Galapagos just one line like Hawaiian Islands. But because of these tectonic plates that are moving, some of them drifting, towards kind of like south, and some of them towards north, and all of them towards east, we have all of this kind of like distribution of the islands. For example, the younger islands are here. If you can see my mouse, the younger islands are by Isabela, which is kind of like a seahorse shape, right? Where volcanic activity is happening now. And that's something interesting in Ecuador. We don't run away from the volcanoes. We actually come closer with our cameras unpacked. And that's fantastic to say it, because it's true. There is, when the volcanoes are erupting, is actually good news, because we got to take good photos, incredible photos actually. And that's what happening in these 2 islands. Isabela being one of the largest and one of the least populated, only 2,000 people living here. In my opinion, one of my best, islands to actually explore. And there's where we do most of our adventure. We do biking, snorkeling, kayaking, trekking over there, which is, fantastic. Very limited number of sports are actually allowed in the Galapagos. Nothing that it involves, kind of like disturbing the animals. For example, windsurfing is not allowed because it disturbs the animals. Jet skiing is not allowed because it disturbs the animals. So everything is ruled by the animals. And our guides, of course, enforce you to stay on the trails and to respect the animals. Animals can touch you, cannot touch the animals. Sometimes you are by the beach, and actually these baby sea lions come close to you, and they maybe comes 1 feet away. You're not allowed to touch them, and they can touch you. Anyway, this is where the hotspot's located, and they're all drifting towards, towards the east. So I will say that Española Island is one of the oldest. In between these two, this is 10 million, and this is 4 million. So that's what I would say, that is such a diverse. In the Galapagos, you move to one island to another, and there is different species and different endemic species. There's 4 inhabited islands in the Galapagos Islands, where actually we plan most of the beautiful trips, in terms of land-based, which is Santa Cruz being kind of like a medium-age island over here. And then we have Isabela among the youngest. And then we have San Cristobal being the capital. So in between all of these kind of like 4, because we have also Floriana over here, we have around 32,000 people living in the Galapagos Islands, right? So let's say around 22,000 living in Santa Cruz, which is kind of like the starting point, like the tourism spot to start most of the expeditions and excursions. And then we have San Cristobal, which also allows to come on a big plane, you know, which is the capital, with around 7,000 people over here. Then we have 2,000 people living, you know, in the Isabela Island, and only 200 people living in Floriana. Floriana happened to be, with San Cristobal, the only two islands with fresh water. Everything else did not have fresh water. So just imagine, that's why in some of the places it was actually before, when the first inhabitants in the Galapagos Islands arrived, it was a very beautiful place, natural talking about, but very little conditions for humans. So now, of course, we have all of the facilities to plan incredible expeditions, you know, into the Galapagos Islands. I would say, of course, I can never stop speaking about it because it's such a beautiful place to go to. So in between the trips we do, we will be exploring all of those islands, you know, and just going outside of those islands is incredible number of species that you can actually see. In the Galapagos Islands, the place where you sit down for grabbing maybe a beer, grabbing coffee, grabbing a drink in a restaurant just outside, and you have to move sea lions so they can actually allow you to sit in. And that's just literally, so it's fantastic. You know, Galapagos, a cruise versus land-based. This, I would like to talk, you know, very quickly about that, because I had the experience to do both, you know, in terms of guidance. You know, on a cruise, you unpack once, go, and kind of like everything is, you know, arranged, and then you do visit different islands. You very little have contact with actually the culture of the Galapagos. I'm talking about the real people which is living there. And in that, what we'll say, which is actually something, you know, that for some people may work. What we mostly promote, I would say, in general, because you know, the Galapagos is also its people. You never is, the wildlife is always guaranteed. So never think that either doing one or the other, you're going to miss out wildlife. Wildlife is guaranteed. 75% of all, or 80% of all of the wildlife that we actually see in the Galapagos is guaranteed. Doing land-based, though, from my opinion, I think is much more sustainable. We get in contact with actually local people over there, and you have a little bit time for your own to explore, you know, how is life being there. Maybe we'll go to local restaurants, maybe not all of the meals are included in difference to the cruise experience, but that's the nice part. You get actually in contact with people in the Galapagos, which has been there for generations. I think, in my opinion, it is incredible. And of course, in terms of adventure, by the cruise, there is limited ways of adventures. Maybe just snorkeling, a little bit of kayaking, but trekking, biking, exploring on your own, doing a little bit more kind of like, you know, off the beaten path, maybe land-based is the option. Also a little bit more affordable, you know, in general. Follow out the Darwin steps. I will say that, you know, this magical ecosystem, I can never stop speaking as much as I already been having my time to speak about it. And of course, you know, one of the best places for diving. I think it is not the best. It's maybe among the top two or the top three. I think there's Paleo, one place which it's competing always with the Galapagos Islands. I'm talking about in the season in the northern islands, such as Wolf and Darwin. For those diver experience, I would say you can dive with maybe 15 to 20, you know, whale sharks around, and maybe hundreds of hammerheads. And the Galapagos is the place where we see a shark, and we actually, I always say this, of course, it's a joke. I always say sharks are vegetarian in the Galapagos. They're not, but it is like this. We see a shark and we call people to come into looking at the sharks, which is actually, you know, it's like, oh, shark, and it's true. So, you know, seeing large sharks in the Galapagos completely okay. Of course, we don't have the great whites and all of the other ones that exist in other parts of the oceans. In the Galapagos, pretty safe, one of the best places. Not only sharks, I'm talking about all of the different incredible, you know, marine wildlife that we can spot. So forget about the stress and please come and get in touch with nature. You know, home of 25,000 different species of flowers. Again, you know, 10% of the world's, you know, kind of like species. Birds, I would say, for those bird lovers, please, Ecuador is one of the best places in the planet. We have exactly close to 1,700 species, of birds, and in the whole planet there is 10,000. So we have already close to 17% of all of the whole birds in the planet. Or maybe, it's gastronomy again. Everywhere you go, there's different food. If you buy the coast, of course, all of what sea products and banana and rice and shrimps, which are, among the best. And of course, if you are the highlands, there's all of this pork, pig, chicken and meat, and all of those grains, potatoes. Maybe you've heard about Peru, that they have 3,500 different types of potatoes. We're not close, we're close by. We're not far from that. But we don't have 3,000, but maybe we have 2,000 something, right? So lots of potatoes, lots of grains, lots of vegetables, incredible. And that's exactly what I was actually talking. Fruits, lots of different types of fruit, all year growing, which will be cacao. Cacao, its origins are the Amazon jungles of Ecuador and Colombia. And I like to say that's how it got distributed before being reported to Spanish or to the Western. We already had cacao as a way of currency, and that's reported by the Aztecs, in Central America. So cacao, we have some of the best cacao, and many of our dark chocolates won many awards worldwide. Now we're very well known for actual dark chocolate. Connectivity to Ecuador. I mean, we have 84 weekly flights to the United States, from Houston, from Miami. It's actually around 4.5, 5 hours, and you're here. Same currency, incredible. So very easy to connect. Very easy to connect. So let's, one we can learn about Ecuador. Of course, it's an incredible destination. Its diversity is impressive, and yeah, we're just hoping that you can actually come. Just let's wrap it up about facts. Similar currency, great connectivity, incredible adventure expeditions, in many different kind of like places. Let's say Galapagos, I already talked, but Ecuador, Quito, Mindo, Cloud Forest, incredible. Otavalo region with all of its culture. Actually, we have a beautiful projects of sustainability, because that's what we practice, which is actually the tendency, but it's not about the tendency, it's about what we feel like it, giving back to the local people. Lots of cultural experience, very deep cultural experience that not found on Google, which is fantastic. That's what we do. Cotopaxi, of course, one of the most, is known as the highest active volcano on Earth. Lots of different adventures that we can do that. Baños, as I already said, Chimborazo, the highest mountain, close to the sky, or the farthest point from the Earth, from the center of the world. It's incredible to explore that part, and of course the Amazon rainforest, which it happens to be one of the best places to spot. No big numbers of animals, but much larger diversity compared to Brazil. Very simple example I'm going to tell you. You go to Brazil, because I've been there as well. Happens that my life as a guide, I know from Venezuela all of the way down to Chile, guiding and of course touring on all of those places. I've been in most of the places. The difference about Ecuador is that in Brazil, you see a lot of the same species, versus in Ecuador, you might not see the same species, but you see a lot of diversity. And that is incredible, I would say. I think, yeah, thanks for your time. And why not come and experience yourself? Now I'm going to open it for questions, and I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry for taking too long. And I'm all here for questions.
All good. There's just so much to share about your incredible country that I know it's hard to keep it to a short 30, 40-minute presentation. Henry, thanks again. So much great information. It feels like, you need months to explore the diversity of your country. But for all of us here who have limited time off, how much time do you recommend we need to explore the mainland Ecuador, and how much time do you think we need to explore Galapagos while working within the constraints of working life and schools and whatnot?
Fantastic. Very good question. If you're only coming for exploring deeply the Galapagos Islands, I would say a week is very good just to say the Galapagos Islands. If you want to combine Ecuador with the Galapagos, I would say extended for 10 day and 12 day. I know, you know, sometimes exactly it's hard to get, you know, vacations. That will be my recommendation. If you can come twice, which will be fantastic, come for the Galapagos, then come to Ecuador a week and a week in different times, and it will be incredible. But you can pack it to 12 days, 4 nights Galapagos, maybe 6 nights Ecuador, fantastic as well. You will see most of it. 10 days, you know, I will say still 4 nights Galapagos Islands, because less than 4 nights is not worth it.
No.
And maybe another 4 nights Ecuador, you know, with the surroundings around Quito, not much traveling, but seeing a lot. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, and having experienced, you know, your country, and I can totally vouch for the people, the hospitality. So having spent a week in Galapagos, I feel like I have to come back to spend another full week. I couldn't do more than a week at that time. I will be coming back for another full week to explore Quito and the main island. There's so much there. So Galapagos, Henry, let's start there, because I know there's a lot of interest in Galapagos. If we were there for, say, 5 to 7 days, which will be the top, and you briefly touched on this in your presentation as well. Can you once again, you know, talk to us as to which are the islands that should be on our radar to explore?
Isabela for sure,
Yes.
no less than
Noted.
3 nights in Isabela, and maybe 2 nights in Santa Cruz. And if you want to extend it a little more, maybe 2 nights in San Cristobal. That will be fantastic. You know, it will be, but it's Isabela for sure. Isabela is where a lot of the wildlife is just out of your fingertips, outside of your rooms, outside. Most of the hotels are beachfront. It's just outside there, I would say.
We had to give way to the marine iguanas who were on the walkway. And the sea lions, and we're kayaking, and there's manta rays and turtles and the sharks as well. We were snorkeling with the sharks. So absolutely incredible. I can vouch for all of this. Thanks for that. And also the islands of Seymour and Bartolomeo, you can add those as well, right? In Galapagos, because having personally visited Bartolomeo, that's the image that people see on the cover of most of the, you know, the content that they see on Galapagos Islands. Similarly for switching gears again to the mainland Ecuador, Henry, what would be like, again, if you have 5 days, there's just so much to do, right? From Amazon rainforest to all the volcanoes, and what would be an ideal sort of itinerary to explore Quito and do justice to the mainland over, say, 5 days?
Yeah, my opinion for adventure, I will say I will go down to Baños area, of course, including Cotopaxi, and then I will move down to the Amazon to have the taste of a 2-day within adventure and exploring also animals, and then I will come back to the island, to the highlands, maybe exploring a little bit of the cultural part of the inhabit, let's say Otavalo and Papayacta. That will be my opinion. If you have less than that, let's say 3 days, then I will go to Mindo, because Mindo is where you packed everything in, but you don't have as much diversity. That will be my opinion, yeah. Mindo, if you have little time, then it's the 3-day extension, so that you have, but if you have a 5-day, I will do highlands with the beautiful snow-covered volcano, Baños,
Yeah.
which is an incredible part of adventure. And
Yeah.
then Amazon a little bit, with a little bit of animals, you know, and having the part of the Amazon, and then seeing the Interandean valleys. Then you will have everything.
So is Mindo, and I haven't explored the mainland yet, so is Mindo, the cloud forest, a part of the Amazon rainforest?
Mindo is on the west coast towards the Pacific Ocean,
Yeah.
and the Amazon rainforest towards the east. So are completely different locations in terms of that, but it's a similar tropical forest. But Amazon is not the same as the cloud forest, right? It is the complete. It's similar.
Different.
It will look similar,
Yeah.
but of course it's a different sense of it. Yeah.
Yes. No, thank you so much. I'm just looking through the chat to see if there are any more question. There's questions around, land-based tour versus the cruise. And I was just typing in the chat saying my personal preference is always a land-based tour. As you mentioned, it gives you exposure to the locals. I also wanted to mention cuisine. Like there's so many amazing restaurants, for example, on Santa Cruz. You're not going to have a chance to explore those. And truly I've traveled around 30 so countries, and the hospitality of the people was truly something that stands out. My 6-year-old was playing soccer, with other local kids almost every evening. They're so welcoming. You don't want to miss out on that experience. Besides, what really stood out to me when I went to Galapagos was all these cruises or these big international companies, the revenue, and this is a stat, the research we do as a travel company, 70% of the revenue generated by these large companies goes to those companies. Whereas land-based tours, 66% of the revenue stays in the local economy. And that's sort of our mission as Adventure Tripper, is to connect everybody with local guides and work with those operators who are most sustainable. So it's not just a much better experience, it's also far more sustainable. And I was talking to my guides who were with us in Galapagos, and they were telling me how all these cruises still leave all the garbage behind on the island. So I am not a fan. I don't think we will ever bring the cruises. It's such an incredible, such a unique place. I think it's our responsibility to sort of preserve it. So I don't think I'll ever bring a cruise ship on my platform. So yeah, just wanted to share because I feel very strongly about it. And there were questions in the chat about land-based tour versus a cruise in Galapagos. What are other questions? Do you offer packages, or does a group need to contact you with what they would like to experience and see? Murli, so we have worked with Henry and his team to come up with the most desirable packages for Galapagos and also for mainland Ecuador. We've already sent groups there. So you can take a look at our website to see what we offer, but absolutely feel free to get in touch. We could run this as private trips. We've sent families over holidays. We've sent groups. We're sending more groups there. So feel free to get in touch. We have the ability to tweak it. We work closely with Henry's team to tweak the packages to offer, to be able to cater to what you're looking for.
Thank you, Preeti. So you do have offerings on your website?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can find them on the website. Anybody else with any other questions? If not, I'd just like to thank on everybody's behalf. Henry, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you putting in the effort and pulling all the materials together and sharing all your knowledge and the love of your country with us. Really, truly appreciate it. And we hope, as we come to your lovely country to kind of see it, explore it, experience it, and all the wildlife, we will do our best to make sure, we minimize our impact and help you guys preserve what you have there. So yeah, thank you so much. And thanks everyone. Apologize for the technical hiccups at the beginning. And thanks for your patience. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you.
This time. I hope I see you here soon.
Yes.
I want to go.
I will be back
I
for
wanna go.
sure. I usually don't go back to the same country, but I will be back to Ecuador.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
See you later this year, my friend. Yes.
Bye
Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.